I'm sorry. There are things I should have said, things you must know. Look behind the painting. A landlord evicts an elderly tenant, only to uncover a hidden letter that unravels a decades-old web of espionage, betrayal, and a shocking truth about his own identity. But before we start the video, let us know where you're watching this video, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe Story Store, and please share your thoughts about this story in comment section. Rain lashed the rooftop in relentless sheets, drumming like war drums against the battered bones of apartment 3B. The wind screamed through broken shutters, rattling loose window panes and slicing cold into Daniel Mercer's soaked collar. His fingers, numbed and trembling, fumbled with the key before the lock gave with a reluctant click. He stepped inside. The door creaked open to stillness. Not silence, never silence, but that strange hush that follows a departure. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting a jaundiced glow across the room. The air was thick with old lavender and something older still, dust, memories, secrets. Daniel paused, his breath visible in the stale chill. The room hadn't changed. Spartan, yes, an old rocking chair angled toward the window, a rug worn thin from years of pacing, and an ashtray that hadn't seen a cigarette in decades. But there was something else now. Something new. A folded letter sat on the windowsill, perfectly centered, as if waiting. A smooth river stone pinned it in place. His name wasn't on it, only a simple inscription in elegant, looping script. To whoever finds this. A shiver worked down Daniel's spine. He approached slowly, drawn and repelled all at once. The storm outside raged, but in here it was quiet enough to hear his own heartbeat. He didn't expect to feel anything. This was a formality. Check the apartment, verify it was vacant, send in the cleaners. She was gone. Eleanor Gray, just another name on the eviction list. But his fingers hesitated above the paper. Something in the careful folds. Something in the way the stone held it, like a relic or a warning. A memory flickered. Eleanor's door always smelled of citrus and tea leaves. She used to hum when she walked the halls. She hadn't been just another tenant. He picked up the letter with a slow, reverent motion, like disturbing the dust on a long-forgotten tomb. His gut twisted. Something was wrong. 3 days before the storm, Daniel Mercer stood at his office window, watching the city grind beneath a steel-gray sky. The coffee in his hand had long gone cold, bitter as the words echoing from the spreadsheet on his desk. Eviction notice pending, 3B, Eleanor Gray, 4 months delinquent. No response. He rubbed his temple, tension spidering behind his eyes. Third quarter profits had nosedived. The board was circling, shareholders sniffing for weakness. His assistant Marla lingered in the doorway, tablet in hand, eyes downcast. "Proceed with the eviction," he muttered, without looking at her. A pause. "She's been here forever, hasn't she?" Marla asked, quiet. "Used to bring cookies at Christmas." Daniel didn't flinch. "This isn't charity work." He clicked approve. The decision was made. Just one more name on a long list. But as the notice printed, something gnawed at him. Eleanor Gray. Apartment 3B. Always quiet. Paid on time. Never a complaint. Then, 4 months of silence. That night, Daniel passed her door on the way out. Blinds drawn, no light. Yet, something made him stop. He knocked, once, then again. A breath held, the creak of floorboards from inside, but no one came. He slid the notice under the door and walked away, ignoring the flicker of guilt in his chest. The next morning, a neighbor mentioned seeing Eleanor speaking with someone. A man in a dark suit, sharp, confident, carrying a leather briefcase. Mid-30s, too well dressed for the building. No one had seen him before, and no one saw him again. Something about it lodged in Daniel's mind. But he had deadlines, reports, problems. There was no time to dwell on strange visitors and silent tenants. Until the letter. Until it was too late. The hallway outside apartment 3B smelled like rain-damp carpet and forgotten dinners. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he approached Eleanor Gray's door, the eviction notice folded neatly in his hand like a final verdict. He didn't have to be here. He could have sent someone else. But something about the silence from 3B unsettled him, like a book that ended mid-sentence. He stood outside the door, staring at the brass numbers dulled with age. He raised his hand to knock, hesitated, then did it anyway. Once, twice, no answer. But as he turned to go, he heard it. Faint, almost imagined. A soft shuffle, the creak of a floorboard. Not loud enough to be an accident. He froze, heart ticking in his ears. "Eleanor," he called. Nothing. A flicker of unease passed through him, but he brushed it off. People hid. People avoided landlords with notices. It wasn't unusual. He slipped the envelope under the door and walked away, telling himself it was just business, that he wasn't supposed to care. Later that night, while locking up the office, the building's maintenance man, Ray, casually mentioned something odd. "Saw some guy leaving 3B yesterday, not Eleanor, younger, suit and tie, real sharp, briefcase, didn't say a word." Daniel looked up, alert. "You sure?" Ray shrugged. "Never seen him before, didn't look like a relative." Daniel filed it away, a knot forming in his gut. That was the last time he saw the door to 3B closed. And it wouldn't be the last time he wished he'd knocked harder. Daniel stared at the letter in his hand, its weight far heavier than paper and ink. The script, elegant, steady, felt hauntingly personal despite the anonymous salutation, "To whoever finds this." He unfolded it with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry. There are things I should have said, things you must know. Look behind the painting." His eyes darted to the faded landscape on the wall, an old oil painting of a coastline at dusk, the kind that once seemed like simple decor. Now it pulsed with new meaning. He crossed the room, heart pounding louder than the storm outside. The painting came off easily. Behind it, tucked into the wall, was a narrow safe, its door slightly ajar. Inside, a stack of weathered photographs, a bundle of journals wrapped in twine, and an old gold watch, its face scratched but still ticking. Daniel picked it up. On the back, an inscription caught the light. "To James, with love, Eleanor." A chill rippled through him. James? He shuffled through the photos. A young Eleanor, easily recognizable by her sharp eyes and calm smile, stood beside a man in uniform. In one photo, they were laughing. In another, embracing. And then a child, blonde, wide-eyed. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Daniel backed away, the room spinning around him. This wasn't just a letter, it was a door. And he had just stepped through. Daniel sat on the floor of apartment 3B, surrounded by pieces of a life he hadn't known was connected to his own. The journals were fragile, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges, but Eleanor's handwriting remained steady, elegant, like the woman herself. He flipped through carefully, reading snapshots of a hidden past. 1972. James held my hand tighter when they came for him. He knew. I didn't. I still hear his voice when I can't sleep. 1978. They say he died in an operation overseas. No body, no ceremony, just silence. The entries painted a portrait of grief stitched with paranoia. Mentions of unmarked cars, coded conversations, the slow, steady erosion of trust. Then, at the final entry, Daniel's breath caught. If this reaches Daniel, he deserves to know who he really is. I tried to tell him before it was too late. The words blurred. He read them again and again. Could it be possible? He rifled through the documents again. Adoption records, a forged birth certificate. One page, faint and almost erased, bore her signature. Eleanor Gray. He felt the floor shift beneath him. His entire life, every assumption, every memory, had cracked open. She hadn't just been a tenant. She'd been watching over him, raising him, from a distance. He wasn't sure when he started shaking, but he was. Because now he needed answers. And ghosts didn't answer questions. The key to the attic was buried in a rusted lockbox Daniel found behind the furnace, labeled in Eleanor's handwriting, "Private." He hesitated only a moment before climbing the creaking staircase to the top floor. The attic had always been off limits per Eleanor's lease. He'd never questioned it, until now. He forced the warped door open. Dust swirled like ghosts in the flashlight beam. The air was thick with mothballs, old paper, and time. Then he saw it. Stacked neatly in a corner, crates marked "Property of J. Mercer." His breath caught. Inside, military uniforms, brittle letters stamped "Top Secret," and photographs, dozens of them. James again, smiling beside Eleanor in foreign cities, in front of coded documents, in rooms with American flags and unfamiliar faces. And then, one photograph stopped his breath entirely. A baby, maybe a year old. Blonde curls, wide brown eyes, in Eleanor's arms. The back was handwritten, smudged but legible. Daniel, 1984. He sank to the floor. His knees buckled, but his thoughts hit harder. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't grief. This was truth. All this time, the attic had hidden not just history, but his history. She had protected him, hidden him from whatever force had taken James, and he had nearly evicted her without a second thought. Now he didn't just want answers. He needed them. Daniel sat hunched over his desk, public records spread out like a crime scene. Birth certificates, sealed adoption files, fragments of Eleanor's journals. The puzzle was nearly complete, yet what he saw made his stomach twist. There it was. Emilio Killing-Zasnio Vanegi adoption form. His name, date of birth. The adoptive parents he'd always known. But in the margins, barely legible, as if someone had tried to erase it, Eleanor's signature. She had tried to tell him the truth, and he hadn't seen it. Why hadn't she come forward? Why rent from him? Why hide? Then, tucked deep in the back of one journal, he found it. Another letter, hastily folded and sealed with a single piece of tape. "They're still watching me, the man with the briefcase. He isn't who he says he is." Daniel's pulse quickened. The man Ray saw, the one no one recognized. He wasn't just a visitor. He was a shadow from Eleanor's past, and maybe still watching. She hadn't run from debt. She hadn't vanished in fear of eviction. She'd been hunted. All this time, Daniel had been focused on rent and spreadsheets. But the truth was far bigger. His mother had been hiding from ghosts that were very much alive. And now, they might be watching him too. Daniel didn't sleep. By morning, he was neck-deep in grainy security footage pulled from the apartment building's lobby camera. Half-functional and coated with time, but still rolling. There. Time stamped 2 days before Eleanor disappeared. A man in a charcoal suit stepped through the entrance, polished shoes silent on the tile. Late 30s, crisp haircut. No hesitation. He moved like he belonged everywhere. Briefcase in hand. Daniel zoomed in. The man glanced at the camera, just once, but long enough for a shiver to crawl down Daniel's spine. That look wasn't surprised. It was calculated. He ran the face through a facial recognition program on a private database a former tenant had once shown him, a little trick he'd never expected to use. The result hit in seconds. Leonard Kane, former intelligence officer. Classified Cold War operations, black sites, disavowed in '95. What the hell was he doing at Eleanor's door? Daniel leaned back, mind racing. A memory surfaced, his junior year of college. A man, sharply dressed, had approached him after a lecture. "You've got potential. Ever thought about working in intelligence?" Daniel had laughed it off. Say number. Now he wasn't sure it had been a joke. Caney hadn't just come for Eleanor. Maybe he'd come for what she'd been protecting. And maybe, just maybe, he was circling back for Daniel. The deeper Daniel dug, the more Eleanor's quiet life unraveled like a coded message waiting to be cracked. She wasn't just a tenant or a recluse. She'd once been one of the government's top code breakers. The journals told a story too dangerous to speak aloud. Eleanor had helped decode Soviet transmissions during the height of the Cold War. Messages that exposed double agents, black operations, and betrayals at the highest levels. But somewhere along the line she learned too much. James, Daniel's father, had been sent on an operation that was never meant to succeed, set up, silenced. Eleanor had tried to expose the truth. That's when the shadows came. That's when she vanished from public life. Every job, every address, carefully chosen. She hadn't just been hiding. She'd been protecting him. Daniel flipped to a page marked only with a date, the day he was adopted. They'll never stop watching. But if he grows up free, unaware, they won't touch him. His throat tightened. All those years, she stayed just close enough to keep him safe, but never close enough to endanger him. The briefcase man wasn't a stranger. He was a reminder. The past hadn't been buried. It had simply been waiting. Eleanor Gray hadn't been evicted. She had vanished, cleanly, deliberately, like someone trained to disappear. Daniel returned to 3B the next morning, hoping for some trace. The apartment was untouched, the air still laced with lavender and dust, but her journals were gone. Only the first letter remained. A neighbor spotted him in the hall. "You just missed her," the old woman said. "Got into a dark sedan, no plates, she didn't say goodbye." Daniel ran the description. The car was registered to a foundation known for aiding former intelligence officers, an unofficial sanctuary for the hunted and forgotten. Eleanor had orchestrated her own extraction. Not because of the eviction notice, because Caney had resurfaced. She knew what that meant. She always knew. Daniel felt the shift like a fault line cracking beneath his feet. His life, his job, his identity had never been what it seemed. Eleanor left before they could reach her. But she'd left him behind, for a reason. She'd passed the truth to him like a torch. Now, Caney's presence wasn't just a threat to Eleanor, it was a warning to Daniel. "You're next." Daniel sat in Eleanor's rocking chair, the storm tapping gently at the window like a ghost, asking to be let in. He turned the gold watch over in his palm, James's watch, his father's. Something about it had been bothering him. A faint click when he pressed the side button. He tried again. This time, it popped open with a soft snap. Inside, a hidden compartment. A microchip glinted beneath the lid, along with a slip of paper etched with coordinates. His pulse quickened. By dusk, Daniel stood alone in an overgrown field outside town, guided only by a flashlight and the coordinates. He nearly missed it, just a patch of disturbed soil. Kneeling, he dug with his bare hands until metal scraped against stone. A rusted box. Inside, a reel of magnetic tape, marked with only a single word: insurance. He played it that night, static, then voices, caney, other men, names, orders, betrayals. They'd framed James, buried him under lies. And now the truth had claws. Daniel didn't just hold evidence, he held a weapon. The hearing room buzzed with tension as Daniel took his seat before the congressional committee. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered. The tapes had gone public. Conversations exposing Cold War crimes, covert betrayals, and the cover-up of James Mercer's death. Daniel's testimony was clear, calm, and devastating. By day's end, investigations had launched. Names once protected by shadow were being dragged into the light, but justice felt hollow. Later that night, he returned to apartment 3B. The room was quiet, untouched since Eleanor's disappearance. The old rocking chair still faced the window. Rain tapped gently on the glass, just like the night this all began. Daniel sat down, holding the watch in his hand. He looked at the letter again, the one that started it all, to whoever finds this. But now he understood. It was always meant for him. He whispered, voice cracking, "I found it, Mom." The words hung in the silence like a benediction. Somewhere, wherever she was, he hoped she heard it. He didn't just uncover the truth, he reclaimed a legacy, and with it, peace, long overdue.